Okay. Good evening, good afternoon, good evening. We are here for our second live parent session. And please, some of you, I know there's some new people joining us tonight, so I'm just going to quickly explain to you some of the technology. So what you'll find is on your screen in the corner, there'll be a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. And what you can do there is you can write to me a question. I'm the only one who can see it, and I can then feed those into some of the work we're going to be doing today. So what I'll try and do, if you interact with us in that way through the Q&A section, I will try my best to type some answers, to collect some ideas, and to feed them into the stuff that Mrs Simmons is going to be talking about. Last week we had about 150 comments and questions made, so it's quite tricky to keep up. And what I've learnt, as I'm terrible at fast typing, so I apologise in advance for typos and stuff, but I tried my best to answer as many questions as I could. But I also, if I take ones that I think are useful to the conversation, I will stop Mrs Simmons, or I'll put it into Q&A sections as she talks to see if she can see if we can answer some of your questions, probably about Thrive and some of the techniques we're going to go through. Thanks for all the comments and stuff that you left last week. We've taken those away, and the ones we didn't answer, but some of the questions that came through that we've built in, well, Mrs Simmons has built into today's stuff. So what I'm going to do in a second is I'm going to disappear off your screens. The next person you're going to see is Mrs Simmons. I'm going to open the Q&A section, so please say hello to me. A few people have already, which is wonderful. Says that some people can't hear. Hopefully you can. Mrs Simmons, give me a nod. Can you hear me? Yeah, so I'm definitely live. Just make sure that you've got your speakers on and those sorts of things if you're having problems. Please say hi. And if you've got any technical issues, let me know and I'll try and help. But last week, a couple of people, when they left and came back, it was all okay. So if you're having trouble with sound or video, please leave and then come back, and I'm sure that'll help. So keep writing to me. I'm going to put Mrs Simmons on the screen, and she's going to lead us through today's session. I'm going to get whizzy at this, I'm sure. I'm still learning a bit. So let's have a quick look. 1 second. And that bit. Okay. Yes, we're ready to go. I'm going to mute and I'm going to pass over to Mrs Simmons. 1 second, Mrs Simmons. Okay, you're now on screen.
Okay, thank you. Hi everybody, thank you for joining us tonight. I know it's really hot, so thank you for taking the time to come and join us for this session. Thank you if you came last week, and if you didn't, I will recap briefly on some of the things as we go through if it's relevant. So today we're going to be thinking about how we will acknowledge experiences generally, but also with specific relation to COVID-19 and the pandemic. So how we'll be doing that in school or online with your children. And then some of the feedback last week sort of asked for more activities and things like that. So I've tried to drop those throughout, and there'll be more over the next 2 sessions as well. So I'm going to start us off looking at some activities now. So when we are doing Thrive sessions or talking about Thrive, people often ask which activities are good to use, and really any adult is good to use, because the whole kind of basis, the underpinning of Thrive is working alongside an adult, a trusted adult in relationship with a trusted adult. So anything that you wanted to do together, having fun, is a really nice thing to do. Relax Kids are an organisation that have come into the junior school before and worked with some of the junior school children, and I think they are currently working in the infant school, supporting some of the infant school children, and they have a really nice sequence of activities that they use, which helps to bring children from high energy down to really calm and relaxed sort of state. Because if you're thinking about an activity to use when a child is dysregulated. Dysregulated can be displayed in different ways, so it might be kind of shouting out or kicking or those kind of things, but it could also be withdrawn as well. And so I think this kind of sequence of activities is really nice. You don't have to use it as a sequence, you can just take the bits that you need. So if you wanted some calming activities, you can take some of those, or if you wanted some of the more uplifting activities, you can take some of those. So I'm going to talk through a typical Relax Kids sequence, and when they work with the children in school, they do the whole sequence in one session. Oh no, I've gone on two. I'll have to go back, so I'll have to stop sharing my screen and change it. Oh, I did this last week as well. Right, let's try this. Seems the same. Sorry, everybody.
Resharing it came up on the screen. Definitely live.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay, this is the one we need. Right, so sorry about that. So the sequence of activities starts with moving and playing, then moves into stretching, then self or peer massage in the feel section, breathing, believing and relaxing. So I'm just going to talk you through briefly some of the activities that you might like to do for some of those areas, but obviously you would probably have your own ideas as well, and any activity would be absolutely fine. So in school, for the moving type activities, we might do something where you pretend your body is like a bottle of fizzy lemonade and you've been shaken up. So what would that look like? Shaking your arms, shaking your legs. We might do some like go noodle dancing, or maybe you would be outside, you would make an assault course or do races, anything that is high energy and that is really fun. So you would start off with that, and that could be for a couple of minutes, maybe a bit longer, but those are some of the kinds of things you might like to do there. And then play, the next section. So that could be board games, I Spy games, those kind of things, or it could be more imaginative games. So it could be, for example, handing an object, an imaginary object, around in a circle of children and coming up with a story behind it. So we've done like, oh, you're handing around a baby chick around the group or something like that. So it could be something like that. If you're doing it with less people, it might be a made-up game, telling stories together. So any kind of game really where you're interacting with other people is perfect. And sometimes what Relax Kids do is they give them a theme to the whole session. So they might say, oh, today we're going to imagine we're at the beach, or today we're going to imagine we're at the zoo, and then you can kind of link your activities, tailor your activities to that. So for the play section, maybe you're going on an animal hunt, which animals can you spot, those kind of things. So imaginative games are absolutely fine. And then the next section, the stretch session. So you could make up your own poses. So if we were at the zoo, you might try and make up different poses for different animals. You might ask the children to make up their own poses, or you might use something to, like, we've got these nice little cards that show different yoga poses. We've got like the mountain pose, the warrior pose, things like that. And I think there's quite a few things like this online and lots of free things that you can use. And again, at Go Noodle have some nice relaxation. I think that it's in the flow section of Go Noodle, and they do some yoga activities there. So it's kind of starting to bring the energy level down a little bit with the stretching. Then the next section is kind of the one that people tend to feel a bit more worried about, perhaps. So massage, peer or self massage, but it doesn't it doesn't need to be as intense as it sounds. So, for example, like if we were at the beach, you were pretending you're at the beach, you might say, oh, can you make some seagulls like dance along your arm? Or what happens if a bucket of water is tipped on your head? So it doesn't have to be kind of particular like massage ideas in the same way that you might imagine it. It can be quite fun, and it can be children doing that to themselves, or if they feel comfortable with that, they might do it to each other. So for example, you might do like a bear walk up somebody's back or something like that with your hands. And it's really important to talk about being really gentle or being really respectful, because actually some children find like a really gentle touch quite irritating and would prefer like a firmer touch. So it's about talking to the person and saying, is that okay? Are you happy with that? Do you like that? Then the breathing section. So again, we've got some little bits and pieces for that. So you might use like these are quite nice, these little windmills. And I think the idea of using something like this is to show how long your breath is. So you can talk about breathing out, and you can see how long you're breathing out for, because the wheel would be spinning. We've also got like straws, so you could move little objects. We've got like little cotton wool balls and things like that, so you can blow and move them between you. The same with things like feathers or even bubbles. These are always really popular. Children really like to use these. Then the believe section. Again, sometimes people feel, oh, I'm not really sure what to do in this section, but it can just be like an affirmation or something that you are asking the child to say, or they've decided that they want to say. So there's some examples here to the side. I'm not sure how big they are on your screen, but they say things like, I am special, I am happy, I am confident. So you might like to use something like that. And then the last section is the relax section. So I've done these with children before, and they do really like it, like especially if we lay on the carpet, and if you get blankets or yoga mats to lay on, things like that, they do really like it. So visualizations, and there are examples of these online. They're not very long, which is quite nice, and they're just like little stories. So I've got a really short one that I'm going to read to you now that you might use with children, or maybe use something similar. So this one is called the starfish, and you might say something to the children like, or lie on your back with your arms and legs spread out and stay very still. Imagine you're a sleepy starfish resting at the bottom of the ocean. And you'd have the children kind of really quiet and let them know that it's not really a time for talking. And then focusing on your breathing. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, relax your arms. Breathe in, and as you breathe out, relax your legs. So just thinking about different parts of your body and linking how you're feeling to different parts of your body. See how still you can be at the bottom of the ocean, resting like a sleeping starfish. Say to yourself, I am calm and quiet, and that's it. And you can make up your own, or there's other ones here. So there's a little website at the bottom, relaxkids.com/free pack, and there's other examples there. So yeah, so when I've done those before with children, they have really liked them. Were there any questions about any of those activities, Mr. Beament, or anything like that?
I had a couple of one question around your previous page when you went through those different sequences, and can you pick and choose from those kind of things, or is it meant to be a progression?
So you can do either. So you can either follow them in sequence, so taking a child from like really high energy to low energy. And I forgot to say, like, we've made up some little boxes at school. So this one's like a movement box, and we've got things like a skipping rope and a elastic band and different things in, so they're kind of ready to go. Or if you're wanting to do just the calming part or just the kind of livening you up part, you can just pick and choose. Yes, you don't have to do it as a full sequence. Okay. I'm just going to talk about it. We've moved on. I'm just going to talk about what was on the page. So on the page was the different strands of the Thrive approach. So it was the being, doing, thinking strands, and then next to it I had put the pyramid of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because somebody asked last week, is Thrive related to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs? I will try and get it up, and the answer is yes, it is related. Here we go. So you can see them both. I think you can see them both. Can you see them both? Okay, perfect. So yes, so they are related, but they're slightly different as well. So with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom parts of the pyramid are your like basic needs, so psychological needs, feeling safe and feeling special, very similar to being, and then safety needs, things like having a roof over your head, having food to eat, those kind of things. But the difference between the two is, for Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's more of building on top of each other. So you've got to have one layer secure before you move on to the next layer, whereas Thrive talk more about moving between the different levels of development, the different age-related stages. So it's really normal for people to move between the different layers. So I think last time we talked about, for example, if you were in like a minor car crash or something like that, you would go back to being, and you would need support from somebody else to tell you what to do, to help your thinking brain come back online, so that then you are able to make good decisions. So Thrive is more thinking about recycling those stages, whereas Maslow's hierarchy of need is the bit before needs to have been met before you move on. But they are very, very similar. And I thought this picture was quite good because some of the colours are actually quite similar as well. And I think they cover similar ideas. So we talked about the brain last time. So we had the brain stem, which is where fear and rage are kind of managed and located, and that's sometimes called your reptilian brain. And then the limbic system, and that is your mammalian brain, and that is the area that is to do with seeking, exploring, play, social bonding. And then your cognitive brain, your thinking brain, which enables you to kind of think through consequences and make more complex decisions. So we talked a little bit last time about fight, flight and freeze. So when you experience a stressful situation, a kind of very basic understanding of it is that your amygdala, which is in your limbic system, in the mammalian brain, will kind of send out an alert, a chemical alert, which triggers your fight, or freeze reaction. But all of those other things that your limbic system would do, so your seeking, your playing, all of those things kind of go offline. So you're just left with the fight, flight or freeze. Oh, that's a mouthful, isn't it? You're just left with that, because if you were kind of thinking way back, if you were, being chased by a tiger, you don't need to know how to play, you don't need those skills, but you do need to know that you need to run. And we also talked a little bit about how when you have the repeated experiences, repeated positive experiences alongside an adult within a stressful situation, it would strengthen the pathways in the brain, and then eventually the other pathways would become pruned away, and that kind of response would become more kind of typical or automatic response. I did mention briefly about how Thrive is based in creative activities, and that's really important because they link the left side of the brain, which is to do with, in very basic terms, logic and language and lists and those kind of things, and the right side of the brain, which is more emotions and creative. So creative activities help to link those two sides of the brain together. So connections between the left and right hemisphere of the brain are made through creative activities, eye contact, facial expressions, all of those kind of exchanges. And it's really important because most activities that we do require both sides of the brain rather than one or the other. So that is necessary for kind of optimal brain functioning. And if you are able to have good links between the right and left side of your brain, that helps you to make links between your physical experiences and your learning experiences and helps with your understanding of your sense of self. So that's why, a very quick recap of why the Thrive activities are kind of creative based alongside another adult and why they are repeated, why that's really important. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about those bits before we move on.
Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. No, if you keep going for now, and I'll jump in a sec.
Okay, no worries. So today, what I wanted to talk about was, I'm really nervous about moving this PowerPoint on, celebrating and validating experiences. So why are we doing that and how are we going to do that? So it's important because it helps the children to kind of appreciate that everybody experiences things in different ways. It's the beginning of being able to think about your feelings, about different situations, and validating is really important. It's different to reassuring or contradicting or trying to kind of persuade something else. It's more recognizing, acknowledging, and thinking into how that child might have been feeling. So within Thrive, there's a really important tool that is used called the VRFs, or the Vital Relational Functions. And this is to do with the way that we are when we're talking with children, the way that we are when we're interacting with children. So there's 4 different stages, and I'm going to talk about them in detail each stage. So the first stage is attunement, which is where you kind of match the emotional level of the child. And I'll give some examples in a minute as well. And then the second stage is containment. So that might be through rules or boundaries, or it might be physically within a safe space, something like that. Validating the child's experiences and then helping the child to regulate themselves. So this is all alongside a trusted adult, and it's helping the children to develop resilience and stress management skills so that they're able to manage that themselves in the future. So the first part is attune, which is when you're noticing how a child is feeling. So it might be through the things that you're saying. So, I'm noticing that you're really quiet today and you've kind of taken yourself away from everybody else. I'm wondering if you're feeling a bit lonely or a bit upset. And Thrive talk about catch and match the feeling. So helping the child to feel that you understand how they are feeling. So it might be through facial expression. So you can see that in the picture here, hopefully. The lady is trying to match her kind of facial expression to the boys, or it could be through what you say or the tone of how you say it. So if a child is, quite distressed and shouting, to come in with a really kind of soft voice probably isn't going to help at that particular time. So you might kind of come in with a stronger voice. So showing you understand their emotional state at that moment. And then the next phase is containment. So that's really about feeling safe within the situation. So making it feel bearable, making it feel survivable, staying with the child, being alongside the child, and showing that the child that you know that they're going to get through this with you together. So thinking about the specific situation. So for example, if somebody's been hurt at playtime or something like that, you might be saying, oh, that must have been, you know, that must have been really frustrating for you that you've got hurt, because that's, you know, that spoiled your playtime. I'm wondering if that's made you feel really cross. So wandering in and kind of offering the experience back, but not making any kind of judgments on it, just kind of thinking about how the child might be feeling and showing that you're understanding that situation. And then we've got validation. So we're not going to say, oh, I felt like that before, you know, I just did this and it was fine, or pull yourself together, it's going to be okay. It's kind of saying to the child, it's really difficult when we have really big feelings, and you know, I understand how you're feeling. It's not validating the behavior, and you would obviously return to the behavior. So if the child has done something or said something that's not appropriate, you would be returning to that, and it's not in any way kind of condoning those behaviors, but it's really focusing on how the child's feeling and the child's perspective, and trying to see it from their point of view and imagining into their situation. They may also still be in a high state of stress, and if they are, if we think back to the brain image, they wouldn't be thinking with their thinking brain or even their limbic system. They may still be in fight, flight or freeze, which would mean that now is not a good time to be discussing consequences or asking why, because a child wouldn't have the ability to answer those questions at this time. And you definitely return to it, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but this is about in the moment, kind of showing the child that you understand how they're feeling and you're helping them to manage the feeling. So yeah, so this is just an image of the brain, the triune brain that we've seen lots of times before. And if a child is in a high state of stress, it won't be thinking from the thinking brain. So it's not possible to think through consequences or do any of the kind of rationing or reasoning. And then the last stage is helping a child to regulate. So you might offer some suggestions for what you can do to kind of help them feel better at the time. So you might offer a drink of water, or you might offer them to help you with a job that you're doing, or you might offer them to go for a short walk with you or something like that, because for children to be able to calm themselves and manage their own stress management systems, they need experience of somebody else doing that with them, and repeated experiences before they'll be able to do that by themselves. So the whole kind of process, and it doesn't have to be a really long process. It could all be within one interaction. So it could be, you know, wow, I can see you're really, really cross because somebody has broken your bike. You must be feeling really upset about that. And quite often children will sort of say, yeah, I am, and can talk about it a little bit. So you must be feeling really cross about that. We must be feeling really upset. I wonder if you're worried about letting your family know, or I wonder if I wonder if you're thinking about fixing it. So wandering into what they're thinking and then trying to help them manage it, but knowing that they're alongside you. So perhaps we can go and have a look at it together. I wonder if we'll be able to fix it together. Or perhaps we can have a look at it together, and then we could let your family know through a phone call now, or something like that. So you're helping the child to manage the situation, and then to kind of make it better and make it manageable. And then afterwards, it's really I don't know why it's really sensitive, but it's just clicked on twice again, so I'm gonna have to come out again. I'm so sorry. And then afterwards, after the situation, you may go back to it, and if the child has done something that actually they would need to make apologies for or make amends for, or is not appropriate, you would be shining a light on that and looking at that, but dealing with that separately at a separate time. And I'll look at that bit in a minute. So in school, how are we going to do that, thinking about children's experiences of lockdown, because everybody's experiences will be different.
Mrs.
So
Simmons?
Yeah.
Sorry, really quickly. There's one question
That's okay.
which might be to this point.
Yeah.
I've had a question about obviously these sorts of things were done. Relaxed Kids, for example, was done within, and some of these activities done within classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any significant differences about how that's done with groups or with individuals, and how it's done? Is it done differently or?
Okay. I think with the Relaxed Kids, if I just go back to the list again, I think there would be differences for some parts. So for example, the games part, the play part, you would maybe be able to do different things with different numbers of people, but actually it's the same structure and it's the same sequence of activities, whether you're doing it with one child or with lots of different children. So it would be equally beneficial in kind of both settings, really. I think the only difference would be you may be able to do just different kinds of games if there were more children available, but that doesn't mean they would be better games, just different. And the games that you could do in a two, like alongside a trusted adult, would that would be really beneficial.
And one more as well. How would you be able to do these activities and these sorts of things if the child is expressing their emotions physically? So aggression.
Okay.
Get to the point.
So I suppose at that point, you'd probably be more in the situation where you would be using the VRFs. So you would be, attuning with the child, seeing what's going on for them, trying to help them validate their feelings, so validate what's going on for them. And it's really important, I know I said it before, that validating the feelings is not the same as accepting the behavior. So if a child is kind of kicking or hitting or something like that, saying, I can see you're feeling really cross, or you must be so angry, is not accepting that behavior. It's just helping the child to know that you understand how they're feeling, or you can imagine into how they're feeling. Containing, so in that situation you'd probably be wanting to make sure that the child was in a safe space, and it would be important not to send them away, but to kind of be there alongside them, with them. So that might be next to them in the room, or if that wasn't possible, you might just say, I'm going to be just outside the door, I'm going to stay here, I'm not going to leave you. And then helping them to regulate, and then once they've kind of calmed down from the big emotions, and that you've done the containing part, then you might want to do some of the breathing activities, so like blowing the windmills or something like that, because that's all really good for calming, because it's encouraging children to take really deep breaths and really slow breaths. So if you say, like, oh, I wonder if we can make the windmill spin round for like 5 seconds, now can we do 6? So sometimes things like that. I think it talked on the slide about for helping a child to regulate, you might need something that would kind of catch their interest, and often that's something that's really seems quite random. So it might be like this, or blowing the bubbles, or bubble wrap, like popping bubble wrap, things like that. So I think if a child was kind of in that state, it probably wouldn't be the time to do these activities right then. You'd need to do the VRFs part first, and then you could maybe move into some of the breathing, stretching, those kind of activities.
And there's one more as well, which kind of goes quite nicely with what you're saying. It's a specific question, actually. When you're validating an experience, would you avoid, why when validating the experience would you avoid reassuring the child?
Oh, I don't think you'd avoid reassuring the child. I think you would want to avoid sort of saying, oh, you don't need to worry about that, everything's going to be okay, because that's possibly kind of glossing over the feelings and possibly making the child feel like that they've not been understood, or that their feelings have not been understood, because I think Thrive talks about behaviour as a communicator of emotions. So if you're acting out, or even if you're withdrawn, that's communicating what you're feeling. So I think if you're saying you don't need to worry about it, it's okay, it's really well meant, and obviously you're wanting to try and make the experience better for the child. But I think at that point in time, it's maybe more important to wander into how they're feeling and have the child feel that you understand how they're feeling.
Great.
And like, you don't always get it right each time. So, I wonder if you're feeling really cross. No, I'm not. Oh, okay. Well, maybe you're feeling. So it's not perfect. Like you're not going to get it right, the wondering in, but that's okay, because that's part of it. So you're wondering, you're thinking aloud, you're lending your adult thinking brain to the child whose thinking brain is not online at that time.
Thank you. Brilliant.
No worries. So in school, to kind of reflect on children's experiences and acknowledge their experiences, I'm going to talk about 2 activities today that your child might do in school, or they might do with their teacher over the online sessions, or an activity that's similar, or you might like to do these activities at home. So the first one is around the metaphor of the cactus, and it's the idea that everybody has their own kind of prickles, and what is it that kind of sparks your prickles. So in school, we might have a conversation as part of the group, with your prickles, everybody feels like prickly sometimes, a bit annoyed, a bit frustrated. What kind of things is it for you? So, for example, and you might give an example yourself, if I'm running really late and then I can't find my keys and then I drop everything on the floor, like that would make me feel really stressed, because everything is kind of going wrong. So you might kind of talk through some of those activities, and the children would give their own examples, and then you can do some drawings to kind of show your prickles. So it may be that you draw a monster or a cactus or those kind of things, and you might just write round the edge some of the things that bring out your prickles, I guess. And I think it's nice. It's a nice conversation, because you quite often get, oh yeah, oh that really annoys me too, or like, oh my sister hates it when that happens, but I really don't mind, like loud noises, she hates it, but I really don't mind. And it's, you know, it sort of brings up a bit of a conversation about differences and tolerance as well. So that's a really nice one to do. And then the balloon, you would draw the outline of the balloon, and inside the material part, you think about things that would lift you up. So you would have it as part of a conversation first, but maybe it would be, you know, oh, dancing makes me feel really happy, or I love it when I play football, or I really like cooking with my nanny. And you would kind of draw those things or write those things in the balloon. And then, you know, they can draw themselves in the little basket. And then underneath, you would draw some little sandbags that would, I imagine, in the scenario of a hot air balloon, help to bring the balloon down. And you would label those with things that do kind of bring you down. So, and encourage the children to sort of think about specific situations. So, you know, it might make you feel really sad if it wasn't, if you thought you were going to be doing something that day and then you weren't, so when plans change last minute. Or it might make you sad if your friends have said something unkind to you. So you would talk about those situations and kind of write them down, and it's a really nice one to do. It helps to give you an insight into, like, as a teacher, it helps to give you an insight into the, you know, the class and how the children kind of work. But it's one that you can revisit as well and sort of say, or is there still something that you think brings you down, or how can we manage some of these things that bring you down? You know, can we match some of these things with some of the things in the balloon? So for example, or maybe what doing the washing up is in the brings you down category, you really hate doing it, but maybe in your balloon you've got listening to music, so can we match them together? So it's kind of thinking about strategies to manage situations that you find difficult. Do we have any more questions at the moment, Mr. Beament?
Yes. There's something, we had a couple of people comment about the language, the word that was, one thing that was really good was when you talked about lending your thinking brain to the child. And there's been some questions about can you give some more examples of the sorts of things you would say to a child at that moment to validate what they're thinking or to think on their behalf? So some examples of the sentences you might say to kind of work alongside them.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think of like a specific situation, and then I can maybe talk through it.
We can come back to that one if you want to.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm just trying to think of a good situation that would give some good examples. So, okay, so for example, like in school, you really wanted your piece of work to be perfect, and you really wanted it to look really beautiful, and you've made a mistake and you started again, and you know you're feeling really positive about it, and then you made a mistake on the next one, and then you were feeling frustrated, and then you feel like somebody looked at you in the wrong way from across the classroom, and now you're just really annoyed and you don't want to do it, and you've screwed up the piece of work and it's now on the floor. So you would, you know, start off by noticing, wow, I can see you must be so frustrated. You know, you really wanted that piece of work to be so good, and you must have felt so cross to screw it up and throw it on the floor. I wonder if you're feeling, I wonder if you're feeling really, really sad that it didn't work out the way that you wanted it to. So that would be wandering into, that would be doing the validating of the feelings. You know, you're so frustrated, you're so cross, and I think in my experience, like, the children will definitely tell you if you've got it wrong, and then that's doing some of the you know, the wandering into the regulating. Then, you know, so you're not necessarily thinking, oh, I've done that part and I'm moving on to the next part. It might just come as part of a conversation. So you might then suggest as part of the containment part, this isn't a child that's, particularly disturbing anybody else. They're just really cross and really frustrated by themselves. I'm wondering if we can go for a walk. I'm wondering if we can talk about what's gone wrong. I'm wondering if we can fix it together. So you're kind of offering, a safe space away from that situation and the chance for somebody else to help. So that's lending your adult thinking brain. You're wandering through options, you're wandering through different solutions and kind of helping the child to come to a solution. And I think the wandering into is really important, because then the child will sort of feel ownership of that solution. So I'm wondering if, it was the outline that was really tricky and that kept going wrong. Well, I'm wondering if maybe I could draw the outline for you, or maybe we could print a picture and we could trace it, or perhaps we could not do that as an outline. Maybe we could draw a border instead, and then they've got ownership over those solutions. So it would probably be different in each situation in terms of lending your thinking brain, but the idea behind that is you're thinking aloud, you're putting language to the experience, because if you've gone back through the age developmental stages, that's what you'd be doing for a much younger child. So you're giving language to the experience and you're offering kind of different options, but in a supportive way, so the child feels like they're not going through this on their own.
That's great. Two little ones. Hopefully you might be doing these quickly. Is there a glossary of terms or a help sheet that parents could look at?
Well, I think I'm just going to have a look in my book, because I think there is at the back.
Could we maybe we could put it on the website or something for download, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe I'm just looking at this one, and I think this one's maybe not quite right, but maybe I could put one together of some of the terminology that we've covered so far and sort of add to it after each session.
Great. And one more. Would you recommend families targeting lockdown feelings or approaching this more open?
I think what we're going to do in school is kind of offer it generally, if that makes sense. So, we might say, obviously, it's been a very different situation. So you might want to think about some of the feelings that you've had during like the lockdown period, or you might want to think about things more generally, because I think for some children, it probably, the feelings they wouldn't be able to say, oh, that's because of lockdown, or I feel like that because of lockdown. So probably more generally, but you definitely could offer those ideas in there. So what would you put in this balloon while we've been at home? What have you enjoyed doing? What's been really fun while we've been at home? What have you found frustrating while we've been at home? So you can definitely sort of tailor it if you would like to. Great, thank you. Okay, right, I'm going to try and click onto the next slide and just the next slide. Okay, right. So it's more terminology, I'm afraid, but throughout all of that, so when you're kind of having that dialogue with children and you are wandering into their world and trying to help make that situation seem survivable, and it's not suggesting that it's a life or death situation, but I suppose if you think back to like the toddler sort of meltdown over I want to wear the wellies, not the trainers, at the time it feels like it is for the child, it is a huge situation. So throughout this, Thrive talk about adopting place as an attitude, and I never remember what all of these stand for without looking it up. But Dan Hughes has put together this idea. So it's playful, loving, accepting, curious, and empathic. So it kind of embodies the whole VRF process, really, because you are supporting the child alongside the child. You're accepting their feelings, which is different to accepting the behaviour, and that's what I'm going to move on to next. The curious part is the wondering into, I'm imagining, I'm wondering if, and then the empathic part is about understanding and relating to feelings. It's a lot to think about, and it is really important to kind of keep that brain model in mind as well, because if a child is very dysregulated, you know, they're doing the hitting, the kicking, the shouting, the screaming, it's, you know, it's not the time to be saying, you know, you've broken this toy, this book, so we're going to have to fix it, or you're going to have to go and sit in your room for 5 minutes, or so. It's thinking about managing that experience before you then go back and look at the behaviour and addressing the behaviour that's not acceptable. So the two parts are really important. So the addressing the behaviour part, oh, I pressed it and it didn't move on. Okay, is that Thrive refer to it as shining a light on the behaviour. So, for example, if we went back to the situation where somebody has kind of screwed their work up, and they've thrown it on the floor. When we come back into the classroom, you know, we've got our plan. I'm going to draw the outline. You're going to do the part in the middle. So we're feeling okay. We've got the plan. You might say something like, "Oh, I noticed when you were really cross, you threw your work on the floor." You know, we don't throw our work on the floor in the classroom because we need to make sure that we're showing respect for everything in the classroom. So please, could you pick that up and pop it into the bin? So you've kind of acknowledged that you noticed it at the time. You know, I noticed that you did this at the time. I'm shining the light on what you did. I'm thinking back to what you did. The child's obviously in a better place. They've got their thinking brain on, so they're able to kind of listen and respond to what you're saying. And then they've then made the repair. So if it was that somebody had been very rude or shouting, obviously depending on the child, you know, the consequence would be different, but the kind of process would still be the same. You know, I noticed you shouted and said some unkind things when you were very cross. When we've done that, it's important to apologise so that people know that we're sorry for what we've said and we didn't want to hurt their feelings. So the first time you may just get, you know, sorry, and not really thinking about it, and it will need repeated experiences of that kind of process to begin to develop the stress management systems to kind of make the links, so that then children are developing their own stress management system. So being supported through this with a trusted adult will help to kind of strengthen those pathways and develop that for children. Do we have any questions?
No, we're okay at the moment, thank you.
Okay, well, that was everything. That was everything I had to talk about today.
Well, that's perfect time. We've got 2 minutes, so the question box is still open. I'm just going to scan through. I'm going to bring you back as a full screen.
Maybe people could drop in the comments if there were particular words or terminology that they would like in a glossary, because I can definitely do that. But if there's some particular words that you would like, then I can put those in. What
a few people have said is that it's not just the words, it's the sentences that you would lend to the child, so to speak, where you would think aloud, which is what
Yeah.
we talked about, but what would that sentence be? So
Okay, so maybe sharing some of the like scripts, I suppose.
Yeah, so things like when you talk about shining the light, how would you talk to the child about shining the light on something? You know, what would you?
Yeah. So starting. I know
in school we use scripts and stuff because that's obviously the consistency across staff and things. So maybe that's some of those pearls of wisdom would be useful. I've had people say that the phrases or the examples you've given have been really helpful. So thank you. That's nice to hear. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is.
Oh, sorry. Before we do, can I just add one more thing about like the scripts? Just thinking about the scripts. I think even if like a really tricky one is when you've seen something happen, so you know it's happened, and the child is really determined to tell you that it didn't. And I think again, it's kind of thinking about how the child is feeling. So you would maybe acknowledge that through saying, you know, I know that's really important for you to have me believe that. So I know it's really important that I believe that, but I know it's not true. So you're still like, even through the scripts, you can acknowledge the behavior, you can acknowledge the feelings and validate the feelings, but still not accept the behavior.
Excellent. I'm just trying to answer a few personal questions. I apologise for all the endless typos that I've done with other questions, but hopefully I've got through as many as I can. What we'll do then, so that's brilliant. Thank you, Ms Simmons. It's fantastic. What we'll do is we're going to end there. It's exactly 7 o'clock. Perfect. We will leave the actual meeting running for about 10 minutes. We will disappear and silence ourselves, and that give everyone a chance to, if they want to add any more questions they might have. But what will be really useful, a bit like last week, is if people have got things that they want you to pick up next week, that might be different to what we've got in our plan. I know our plan's quite it's just a couple of lines for each session, but if it's something that you want to go back over, something that you want to revisit, or just a random question that might be related to this, or whatever you think, if you can put that in the next 10 minutes, if you can put that in the question box, I'll leave it open, and then what we will do is we will download the whole log from the system, and then we can look at that tomorrow, and then Mrs Simmons can build it into next week. So next week we've got another session. Can you remember what the headline of that one was? I know we might change it.
So next week is what can we do if we're struggling? So I've got specific activities to talk about, a little bit more in depth about your kind of stress management system within your body and how that is working. Yeah, that's probably a general. I feel like there's a big chunk I've missed, but that's a general.
Yeah, I put you on the spot a bit. I appreciate that. It is on the list that we've sent out, but we will obviously change it if we've got some people who ask specific questions or want stuff revisited as well.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now. So yeah, so we've got the stress management systems. We've got ways of like managing stress, different activities for being, doing, thinking. Yeah.
Great. And from a wider strategic perspective, we're expecting some further government guidance released by the end of next week, which will be looking at how September might look like. All indications are going towards the guidance changing to get all children back in September. That's what we're hearing, but the guidance hasn't actually been published yet, the new guidance, and we're expecting that hopefully by the end of next week. We've already started looking at plans and planning towards what it could look like, so hopefully we can respond quickly when that guidance is out. But the guidance should be out by the end of next week, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to you more, and I'll be able to send out some more correspondence about what September will look like. But we are planning, if the guidance allows, for all children to be back in September, so watch this space. Is that everything, Mr Simmons, then, for today?
Yeah, I think that is probably I think that's probably everything. I'm just checking for next week to see if there's anything more to add. But yeah, I think that's probably everything. All right.
Great. So we'll disappear, but we'll leave it open for 10 minutes. So it's 3 minutes past, so about quarter past roughly, we will turn it off. But please add your comments now for the next 10 minutes and we can take those away. Okay, thank you. Say bye.
Bye, thanks.
You've been on the
Bye.
screen the whole time. I haven't come back. Bye.
Oh no.